Good morning. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Amman, Jordan for Reason to Resist on October 24th, 2025. During the past 2 years of genocide in occupied Palestine, the German government, one of Israel's fiercest supporters on the world stage, has resorted to increasingly assertive tactics to stifle support for the Palestinian cause. Until this week, German state repression of Palestinian solidarity activism was largely confined to members of civil society. But this week, the German authorities turned their sights on an important and respected political figure in Germany itself. His name is Dr. Jürgen Todenhöfer, and he joins us today from Munich on Reason to Resist for the first time. And thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Todenhöfer.
Hi, Dimitri.
So just by way of background, I wanted our audience to know a little bit more about you. I know you're very well known in Germany. Just to ensure that they understand why, you are a politician, a publicist, a former media manager, and you were a member of Germany's Bundestag for the governing Christian Democratic Union from 1972 to 1990, I understand. So that's 18 years.
And I was spokesman of the Christian Democratic Fraction for Arms Control.
Right. So I also understand that beginning in the 2000s, you became a critic of the United States because of its interventions in Afghanistan and Iraq, which again is somewhat uncharacteristic based on my limited knowledge of German politics for a leading figure from the CDU. So before we explore all of these issues, I thought it would be quite interesting for our viewers to know that you were shot in Gaza in 2019 by an Israeli sniper. Could you talk to us about what happened? What were the circumstances, and how has that affected your life?
It's a little bit of a long story. I was criticizing Hamas for her armed action, and I wasn't in contact with Hamas. I was in contact with Fatah, and many people in Palestine. I was in Gaza several times. I constructed a soccer field, and I had projects, swimming projects, and so on and so on. And so I was there very often to see what is happening in this part of Palestine, how they treat the people. And I was in discussion about the strategy of Hamas to be violent. I said, why don't you take the strategy of Gandhi, a non-violent strategy? And at the end, nobody agreed. At the end, I wrote a poster about this size. So 2 meters, 1 meter. And I wrote very well to read, dear Israelis, please treat the Palestinians the same way you want to be treated. And I went to the Gaza Strip. I asked, of course, I had discussions. People said that's very dangerous. And they have killed many people, hundreds of people there already, and injured, especially. They tried to destroy their legs. So you have many young men in Gaza with one leg. They even have a football team. And I didn't want to have my leg destroyed, but I said, no, these people who are sitting there on the border, there is a shooting tower, a high shooting tower, covered with earth. They are intelligent. And my people from Fatah said, no, they are not intelligent. They're just shooting. And I said, yeah, but there's a Zeppelin over me, and then over me, and there's this shooting tower. They will see that I'm not a young terrorist, or activist, or not a young fighter. I'm a Western man, a little bit older than all these fighters, and they will see. They see me. They see, they say they see everything on a millimeter. If you have a little button or whatever, they see it. They see everything. They said, for example, when one of these shooters said, today I made, I don't know, 12 knees. And I saw the hair on his knee before I took his knee away. So they see everything. I said, they will see that I start to have gray hair, and they won't do anything. And I was walking to this shooting tower, holding this there is a video on Facebook because people were filming me. But I was quite private. So 2 or 3 people were around me, a friend who filmed that. And as I found out later, an Arab filmer who saw what happened. And I went, let's say, at a distance of 150 meters to the shooting tower on the Israeli side, which is not really Israeli, which is a part of the West Bank. And then I spoke to myself, I shouldn't provoke too much. And I turned and I went back, and then they shot some gas grenades over me, and I didn't care. They didn't shoot at me. And suddenly they shot with a distance weapon. That's a bullet big like that. It is called also rubber bullet or whatever. It is not caoutchouc. It's plastic, and it's very hard, and it destroys inside the muscles, and so on. I spoke with military people, and they said you would be happy if they would have shot you with a bullet. The bullet goes through; it doesn't do anything. But this distance weapon destroys inside muscles and so on. And I had big problems the days after. The German government criticized the action of the Israeli government. They spoke with the foreign ministry, and the Israelis apologized and said, we apologized also personally to Dr. Todenhöfer, which was a lie. They never spoke to me. They spoke to me, but not at this moment. And they asked for apologies from the German government. And for me, it was over. I never made a criminal case against that I would have won. And I had afterwards 3 heavy surgeries on both shoulders, the first one on one shoulder. And I had to ask, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything anymore. And I needed a care service, or whatever you would call them, Caritas, who came for weeks and 2 months maybe, to wash me every morning, to wash my teeth, that's not easy to be washed as a man by a young lady. And my assistant and my son had to carry me in my bed because I couldn't go to bed. I couldn't do anything. Everything was blocked. And it is still a problem. And next week I go to another country to treat the shoulder again. So it's not a big thing. I didn't talk too much about it because I saw the victims in Gaza. I've not participated as a kind of journalist, the last war in Gaza in 2014. And I've seen the injuries, the legs cut, the injuries of children. And I thought, I cannot talk about my shoulder. That's nothing. It's an injury. I'm a sportsman. I don't talk about it. But it's not funny.
Yes. So
they call me an anti-Semite, but I'm not. I have in Israel, together with a very famous author, he got the Peace Prize of the German publishing houses, David Grossman. He's a wonderful, famous man there. With him together, I financed in Israel for at least 100,000 euros, my money, projects to bring young Israelis together, but Muslim Israelis and Jewish Israelis. And I did it because I think that there should be peace also in the population. So if I were an Israel hater, I would not make reconciliation projects. If I were anti-Semite, they wouldn't have invited me here in Germany when they invited the biggest and most beautiful synagogue here in Munich. I live in my apartment is in a former synagogue. It was a synagogue destroyed by the American bombardments. So I have a quite relaxed position. My position is I have lived 12 wars, beginning with the World War. I was born in 1940. So I have seen the destroyment of my city in 20 minutes in a big city near Hanau, near Frankfurt, Hanau. And I've lived the war in Algeria. I've lived the war in Afghanistan, the Soviet aggression against Afghanistan, and so on, the German aggression of Afghanistan, the Iraq war, and so on and so on and so on. And there was never a fair war. There's no fair war. And therefore, I'm against wars.
Mhm.
And I criticize the German government when they make wars. I criticize the wars of the Americans, the French, etc. And I'm not an anti-German. I'm not an anti-American. I'm honorary colonel of the American Army. I got this honor decades ago. I criticize wars and I criticize racism.
Mhm.
Because what I have learned a lot from the destiny of the Jews. When I have seen the war in 1945 in my city the first time, and then I was sure no more war. My little friends were killed by this attack of the Royal Air Force of UK. And I have realized what the Germans have done to the Jews. And for me, it was clear, no more racism. No more racism against Jews, and no more racism against Muslims, by the way, which is much stronger than in Europe, than the racism against Jews. Jews are respected, but it's a part of the strategy of the political battle we have. So this is, as you have asked me, a little introduction in my position,
Thank you.
my life with Israel.
So let's move then to current events. It's my understanding that you are now being targeted by a judicial investigation in Germany, and that pursuant to that investigation, you've had your home searched and your phones and your computers confiscated. Could you please tell us about what has been done pursuant to this investigation? In other words, what orders has the court issued against you, and what justification is it giving for these orders?
I'm online also. I have 1.1 million followers on Facebook and Insta and TikTok, which not TikTok also, but X. And I post quite often, and I feel a certain obligation to post. And I'm the chairman of a little party, Justice Party, that I founded when I left the CDU, just to show there is an alternative. We must do something against these crazy war policies that Germany has started to make. And in 2 posts, I criticized first, that's not the most important for you, first Scholz, our former chancellor, because the Bundesnachrichtendienst, the German Secret Service, was informed from the Americans and from other European allies that Ukrainians planned an attack against Nord
Stream.
Yeah, I have a little blockade because so many problems here with Nord Stream. So I got the information that the German Bundesnachrichtendienst Secret Service was informed that Ukrainians wanted to attack Nord Stream, which means it's the biggest sabotage you can make against Germany, with incredible consequences. And what did Mr. Scholz do? He didn't do anything, but he made a wonderful offer to Ukraine. We give them billions of euros. We give them weapons in a war that I find unjustified. I don't think that the war of Mr. Putin is legal. But this war was, in my eyes, and I'm very well informed, I was in Ukraine and I was in Moscow after, was provoked by America, a war which is in the interest of America, but not in the interest of Europe and not in my interest. But this chancellor, instead of punishing those who have known about the Ukrainian attack, I think Zelensky was well informed. There were army people in the sabotage group that destroyed Nord Stream. And we gave billions to these people who have attacked our country. So I said, I have to criticize him. He is betraying the interests of our country. So, first, criminal charges against me, first reason. And the second was opposed. I said, Mr. Netanyahu, isn't your heart, you remind you sometimes that you are doing right now the same things that the horrible Nazis have done to your people. And I know I didn't mention the Holocaust. You cannot relativate the Holocaust. The Holocaust is the meanest, biggest crime of the Germans in our history. I have written that in a new book, and I have written that on at least 5 or 10 posts. It's not saying the Holocaust is not horrible, but for me, the way how Netanyahu is behaving, he behaves like a Nazi. There is no empathy. There's a lot of racism. They don't think that Palestinians have the same value as Israelis. And for me, they have the same value. So I said, doesn't your heart, your conscience remind you sometimes what you are doing? And the court made an official decision saying that they will make criminal charges against me. So I'm a former judge. So I will be in front of another judge because I will refuse everything they write to me. I will ask for a public discussion. That's the first thing. Maybe they will condemn me. Maybe they will give up. We, my lawyers, we ask them to withdraw these criminal charges. But maybe I have 50,000 euro to pay. And if I don't pay, I have to go to jail. And I've declared publicly, I will not pay to them. If I have to pay 50,000 euro, then I will pay them to kids of Gaza. Mm-hmm. And I will refuse to pay to this justice who makes such a ridiculous criminal case, and I will go to jail. And I see it as an honor to go to jail for the freedom of speech in Germany and for the rights of the Palestinians. I don't feel that to go 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever. I have no idea. Maybe they give up. And they have taken at the same time the decision to make a search of my apartment where you make this interview and to take all my mobiles, computers away, which means they never come back. But they didn't execute that because they didn't find me. I have different addresses. And my real address is protected because of terrorists who have said we will get him. And because of other radical groups who threaten me. And therefore, the German authorities have blocked all the research. Nobody can find out if I don't tell him where I live really. And they had problems to find it. But at the end, they were standing. They didn't find me. They went to a house, which they thought it was, and they controlled if I got post, if the newspapers was taken away or was still staying there. And they watched the street, they observed the street. And one day I had a public speech discussion about my new book. This was I think in May. They came to my house, they read it in the newspapers that I had a reading, a lecture. And they came to my house and they were waiting. They said, I know that because they have 170 pages in my case. They treat me like a criminal or whatever, like a drug dealer. 170 pages about me. And they were waiting in front of the house, the police, waiting for me because they said he has his lecture at 7 or 8, I don't remember, and he has to come back. Of course, I had to come back, but I came back only at 1 o'clock because there were so many people who wanted to talk to me, and they had left. So they gave up because they said, it's not possible. He had a lecture today. This man has to go home. Hey, I came home. And they didn't realize, they didn't catch me. And that's the only reason why they didn't make this search and why I still have a mobile. Mm-hmm. But I have a criminal case in some weeks or some days or some months. I have no idea. And this does cost me thousands of euros because, of course, I have to take lawyers.
What precisely is the charge? So let's just focus on the tweet, the post about Netanyahu. What precisely is the charge? Is the charge that you said something anti-Semitic? Is it defamation? What exactly is the criminal charge?
We have a law which is quite new, that relativating the Holocaust is a crime. And I say in a certain way, if somebody is saying this is not important and this is not a real crime, I'm not very far from the position of those who made this law. But that's what they say, that by attacking Netanyahu, saying you are doing the same as the Jews, doing the same means for me, they treat them as second-class people. They shoot at them. The Nazis didn't shoot to the Jews, or they killed at the end some in Poland. Everything horrible. But I didn't mention the Holocaust. So, it's very difficult in Germany. And I say that I had public speech. I could write in all the newspapers and all the TV shows, and my books were a big success about the Middle East. But now it's very difficult to say something against people like Netanyahu. And it's very difficult also about the support for Ukraine. I support Ukraine also in a certain way. We invited 2 families in our home, 2 Ukrainian families. We give German lessons every day to up to 10 young Ukrainians. I do whatever I can, but I don't think we will find a solution by giving weapons and weapons and weapons to Ukraine. That's not the solution. Our chancellor has never been, for example, in Russia. He doesn't know Russian. He has never been talking to Putin. And I'm against this war. I think this war, and I think the delivery of weapons, of long-range weapons to the Ukraine, to a man like Zelensky, is very dangerous. And to criticize Netanyahu immediately, you are treated like an anti-Semite. And they try to find a way to say that you relativated the Holocaust. But I've never done it. I will never do it. It has formed me. The Holocaust has given me the impression that one should not be silent. One should fight against racism. One should fight against wars.
Right. So if I understand correctly, the position of the court or the investigator is that by comparing what Netanyahu is doing to Palestinians to what the Nazis did to the Jews, you are diminishing the gravity of the Holocaust. Is that the allegation?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's.
I wanted to push the German population against the Jews, which is completely crazy.
Right. It is. It's totally crazy. Now I just want to also try to understand the charge against you with respect to the Nord Stream pipeline. So what are they saying there? Are they saying that you insulted the chancellor, or that you defamed him? Basically, you defamed the chancellor? Is that what they're saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
We have a new law, which is a kind of not allowing anymore to insult our majesty. And for a democracy, it's crazy. We had this law in our monarchy.
Right.
But, what I have now, I created a little party. So we got 300,000 voices. That's not much. And because there was a boycott against us, and there's a boycott against all the little parties who start and to want to change this country. Because I think this kind of politicians will not give us security. They will not give us peace. And even our economy is going down. Everything is going down. I have doubts that people spend their time in the parliament for 20, 30 years. I was also too long in the German parliament. They just want to be re-elected. They don't care what is happening to the country because they follow the mainstream, because the mainstream could guarantee them to be re-elected. The first thing a politician, when he's elected, is thinking is, what shall I do now? Not for the country. What shall I do now to be re-elected? It's the same with American presidents and French presidents. But they can run only twice. Here, a member of the parliament or a chancellor can run as long as he wants. And I think it's the kind of politicians we have sometimes haven't learned anything, haven't had any job. They are not at the level, not at the capacity, and not at a moral level to run a country. They have to be re-elected because in the jobs they had before, they got much less. So it's a long question. But I have a lot of doubts. But also my party, which is fighting, we have in the municipalities, we have people who were successful. But also our fight as a little moderate, I would say humanitarian party, is very, very in danger, and they block everything they can. And, when I write a post, I continue to criticize Netanyahu because I have to continue. And sometimes I speak with Palestinians by the phone and say, there are not many. And also Jewish, I say quite famous Jewish people. I ask, is Israeli people? I ask, shall I be quiet now? Because my kids have problems. Everybody gets problems. And when I go outside, I don't know if the policeman is controlling the cars who are parking there, or if they are looking for me. And why should that? I don't need it. I could talk about other things. Bayern Munich football or whatever. We have a very good football team. But Israeli people, well-known people, said, I asked for advice. They said, please continue. Please raise your voice, because otherwise we are completely alone. Because there are also many Israelis fighting for another Israel, for an Israel like Herzl promised, the creator of the idea of Israel. He said, a model state of tolerance. I would love a model state of tolerance if Israel would become it again. But now you have a right-wing government, and you have a prime minister who is acting like a Nazi. He would have been a very successful Nazi. Under the Nazis would have been very successful because there is no empathy. For him, an Israeli, and it's even difficult for the Muslim Israelis. Some have an idea. It's even difficult for them to live. And Netanyahu is a catastrophe. Netanyahu is also a catastrophe for the whole Western world, because we have said not me, but we have said so many times that this is how we would run the Middle East. No, we should not run the Middle East like Netanyahu is running it.
I'd like to talk to you, Dr. Todenhöfer, about the German government's support for Israel. Now, those of us from outside of Germany have been hearing for many years that the reason why the German government is so adamant about supporting Israel is because of the historical sense of responsibility of the German people and the German state for the Holocaust. And I want to be very clear. I completely accept without any reservation that there are many Germans today who feel this historical responsibility, and it motivates them to support Israel. But I personally am becoming skeptical that today this is the primary reason for the German government's support for Israel. It just strikes me as incredible that people like Chancellor Merz or Chancellor Scholz or Annalena Baerbock believe that the German government owes a duty because of the Holocaust to support a state that is committing genocide against the Palestinians. And I wonder, is the German government's policy with respect to Israel today, is it being influenced by other factors? For example, is it being influenced by deference to Washington? Is it being influenced by a desire for Germany to, along with other Western states, to control the resources of the region of West Asia? What do you think are the primary factors motivating the German government's ongoing support?
Many Germans, not only the government, don't have courage when it comes to Israel. I do not think that oil, petrol, or other raw materials are the reason. There is a historical responsibility. I feel it too. But this historical responsibility would mean if Israel would be now, the economy wouldn't work, the people would die because they are hungry. I would say, yes, we have to help them. We have done so many horrible things with them. But if a friend of mine, and I have considered Israel also, and we considered like a kind of ally, a kind of friend, but if my best friend is killing with a knife or a machine gun kids, I will not support that. It could be my best friend. He is sitting my assistant and friend. If he would kill kids, I would never support it. I would try to hinder him, and he would try to hinder him. This has nothing to do with friendship. And in such a situation, sending weapons for millions and millions, weapons to the country who commits genocide is a crime. By the way, I made a case at our general prosecutor, and I said, this is a crime. It's supporting war crimes. The International Court for Justice says they commit war crimes and crimes against the humanitarian laws. And if we send them weapons, we support this crime. In the first semester, when you are studying law, you learn that. And the general prosecutor has answered to me. He said, I see no reason why I should continue this case and try to find out if this is support of war crimes. So they just stopped it. And other countries after me made a case also against Germany. Our justice system says that's not a support. So that's just, we have a separation between our government and the justice system. It is horrible. By saying that supporting with weapons a war criminal is not supporting a crime. You can't tell it to anybody. They say, but we are have the rule of law in our country. Mm-hmm. I say in the case of Israel, we don't follow the rule of law anymore. Mm-hmm. And the reason you asked, is it the obligation, historical obligation? I think it is cowardness. Because there are some very powerful people. You get problems with the Americans. I don't have to tell you that the Americans are powerful. Mm-hmm. And you get problems with people around Netanyahu who have an incredible influence in the world. Just to give you one example, Trump cannot finance his campaign in the United States. Trump would not be elected if he didn't get the support of the Israel lobby in his country. So the power is great, is big. And in a certain way, I think, I can understand that Jews, after what they suffered, wanted to have power in this world. I understand that. I was, at the beginning, decades ago, I was I was saying, yeah, that's good. But the way they use the power is not good. And I'm not talking about the Jews. I'm talking about the Israel lobby. I'm talking about the people around the former ambassador to the United States, Ron Dimer.
Mm-hmm.
He is the boss of the Ministry for Strategic Affairs, which is a propaganda ministry. And these are the people who push people in Germany to make a lawsuit, a criminal case against this or against that, or get an article from the pro-Israel newspaper Bild Zeitung.
Mm-hmm.
They have the Israeli Zionists. I'm not talking about Israel. I have nothing against Israel. I have nothing against Israel. But I think a part of the Zionists are a problem. I was in the West Bank 7 weeks ago. I saw how every day settlers are burning houses, are burning cars. I was there at a burning house. And the IDF, the Israeli army, arrived also, but they shot. They didn't have the people to save the burning house. They shot at them.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the owner of the house died, not by the Israeli army. And this is happening every day.
Mm-hmm.
And the settlers are a big problem. The Zionists are a big problem. I had a week ago, last week, 5 days ago, I was in Doha. I spoke to Hamas. I spoke to the leadership of Hamas, to the guy they tried to kill during the negotiation. He was one of the chief negotiators, who was one of the architects of the peace solution, of the stop of the war. They shot at him with 12 rockets during the negotiations to kill him. They have killed his son. He's continuing. And he said me, and I'm not a friend of Hamas, and I will not become a friend of Hamas because I'm not for violence. But he said, we have no problem with Jews. We have no problem with Jews in Israel. We have no problems with Jews in Arab countries. There are not many anymore. We have no problems with Jews in Europe. We have problems with the occupiers who treat us like animals, under animals, not even as animals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if people would really read what the Palestinians are saying, they always say, yeah, but Hamas wants to destroy the state of Israel. No. They ask for an own state in the borders of 67, which means they accept the other state. If you talk about the two-state solution, it means you accept Israel. Of course, they would accept Israel if Israel would give them the state. The United Nations decided, I think, in 47 or something like that. They said, we will divide the Palestine mandate into an Israeli, into a Jewish, and into an Arab countries. That's a decision of the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
And they never realized it.
Mm-hmm. My last question to you is of a legal nature, Dr. Todenhöfer. I understand you mentioned that you were a judge. I've practiced law myself for over 30 years. I started my career in New York City, and before entering the legal profession in the United States, I had to study U.S. constitutional law at a law school in New York City. And
you had to teach yourself.
I had to take a course, and I was born and raised in Canada, and that's where I got my law degree. But before I could work in New York City, my law firm asked me to do a degree in U.S. constitutional law, and one of the subjects was, of course, free speech. And I learned that the First Amendment under the U.S. Constitution provides robust protection for this critically important democratic right. And I'm curious to know, does the German Constitution contain explicit protection for free speech? And if so, how is the German government getting away with coming after people like yourselves for merely expressing entirely legitimate opinions.
By the way, we have something in common. I was teaching constitutional law also for one semester in a German university.
Okay.
And we have this free speech article in Article 5 of our Constitution, of our Grundgesetz. So it's very clear. No censorship is allowed. And that's the kind of censorship they make now. And it's the government. And it's also the public TV in Germany. We have very good journalists in the public TV, in RD, and but I give you just to tell you how it works. I published a book which had just this year on May when the police was waiting for me, and the title is if they don't follow you, go alone. So I had something to do with my life, and sometimes I did the things alone because I have to follow my heart, my conscience, my what I think is right, and what is written in the Constitution. We have a wonderful Constitution. But for example, what they do, I published in the biggest publishing house of the world, Bertelsmann, that you know, they are the biggest in the world. So usually they have the help from the media. But the media didn't talk one single word. So they don't criticize my position as far as Israel is concerned. They just don't publish anymore. When I make speeches for peace in Ukraine or for peace in Israel, I have the Chinese TV, the Russian TV, the Hungarian TV, the Switzerland TV, Austrian TV, German TV. We have sometimes 30,000, 35,000 people. All these international TVs came, and 500 meters wider, it was on the day of the security conference in Munich, and 500 meters or 1,000 meters away was talking a politician from the government. He didn't have 35,000 people, he had 500. All the German TV stations came to him to film him. They don't care what the people think. And when I published this book and when I showed it to the public, I got an invitation from the German TV, which is very difficult because I've already criticized the war of 2014 of Israel. And just they gave me the invitation 5 months before the publishing of my book. And some weeks before this day, we went out with the book on the 1st of May. Sometime, suddenly, the agent of Bertelsmann got a phone call. Sorry, but Mr. Todenhöfer isn't allowed anymore, isn't invited anymore. And the agent lady, she said, what happened? What happened? Yeah, we read what he is saying in his public statements. So it can be Israel or it can be Ukraine. So they just say, you are out. We don't want to hear. And they said word by word, we don't want to have a shitstorm. When I speak on TV, there's never a shitstorm because I speak very freely, very frankly. That's interesting for people. We don't want a shitstorm. So I wrote nicely, very politely to the boss, the intendant of the MDR, is this East German public TV station called, that we have, all the citizens have to finance it every month with a certain amount of money. We are obliged to, otherwise you go to jail too. And the boss, the intendant, I asked him, could you please tell me what is against our constitution? Why you tell me that I cannot come to your TV show? It was a TV show about me. So I don't need TV shows because I have, as I said, more than 1 million, 1.1 million followers. I can tell everything to everybody. I have more followers than this show.
Mm-hmm.
But they destroyed all our strategy because the show was supposed to be on the day of the publishing of this book. They just, they would never say that the boss of this television didn't answer to me. The spokesman answered after, I think, 2 months. And they would never say it is because of Israel. No, nothing is because of Israel.
Right.
We cannot take you. It would be a shitstorm. And they do the same with all the people in Germany who are fighting for equal rights for the Palestinians and who are for that criticizing this prime minister. I don't criticize every prime minister. I think Rabin was great. Even Olmert was much better.
Now, before I let you go, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. What you mentioned your followers. What platform is this on? Because I'd like to include a link to your platform on our video description. Is this on X?
And X is my worst because I don't have many followers. I have 66,000. I have hundreds of thousands on Facebook. 650,000. I have some 250, 40, I don't know. On Instagram, I have followers. On TikTok, altogether, it's 1.1 million.
Okay. Well, we'll include links to your various accounts in the description of this video. A great pleasure speaking with you. And I hope very much, Dr. Todenhöfer, that you'll be able to keep us updated on the progress of this criminal proceeding. We would be very interested to know how it all turns out.
Me too. And thank you very much to you too. And
thank you.
I hope you will continue to fight in the same direction as you did during the last time.
Wonderful. And we're signing off from Munich and Amman, Jordan on October 24th, 2025.